Hi, my name is Mohammed and I want to talk about video games, whether they are good or bad. Video games are the product of human wisdom. Since they have been made, video games' nature changed and developed along with the development of technology, becoming more sophisticated. Nowadays, video games become very popular and an important part in every person's life. In 2011, 91% of kids in the United States play video games according to the NPD group. Because of the prevalence of video games, they have caught the scientists' attention all around the world. Many studies have been done by prestigious scientists from advanced universities about whether video games are good or bad. People got confused about the truth of video games. Shall they stop playing video games to prevent themselves from video games risks, or continue playing video games to get advantage and benefit from them? Fairly, both two sides have two facts and points. Video games can be damaging and advantageous at the same time. It depends on the proper usage of the gamer. But ultimately, many studies have shown that video games have positive powerful effects in gamers, and scientists today have expanded the usage and application of video games beyond entertainment. They use video games in educational and medical fields to make them better due to their quality and effectivity, which make the video games a good thing overall. However, many psychologists and scientists focus on the negative effects of video games, including that they increase the level of violence in players, making them less sympathetic and addicted to video games. First of all, violence in video games was studied and discussed for a long time by elite of teams from different universities around the world in order to show its risks on health and social life. This violence and its risks is not coming from all kinds of video games, but only from violent video games. The games that have bloody scenes and violent actions like killing, shooting, and destroying. And the most famous models of this category are Condemned 2, Call of Duty, GTA, and The Club, and they all classified as 18+.
Many scientists discussed the violence perceived from video games, and they concluded that playing those games lead to more violent and aggressive behaviors, and they tried to link that violence to real-world crimes. Secondly, scientists said that the repeated exposure to violent video games has an impact on the gamer's empathy and desensitization. One of the remarkable studies that discussed this point was a study titled Violent Video Games Effects on Aggression, Empathy, and Prosocial Behavior in Eastern and Western Countries. This study is done by 8 doctors from different universities. In this research, empathy means the amount to which someone sympathizes with casualties and feel emotional adversity, while desensitization means the lessening of bad reaction to viewing assaults and bloodshed. After experimental and non-experimental studies, the authors found that playing aggressive video games is related to less empathy and more desensitization. This study confirms one of the negative effects of playing violent video games about being less sympathetic. Thirdly, addiction is another negative effect that could affect gamers when playing video games, especially in big doses. A website titled Video Games Addiction discussed the symptoms of addiction, the reasons of addiction, and the physical and social effects of addiction to video games. But what really matters is that the website is saying that video games addiction causes physical consequences. It causes carpal tunnel syndrome, migraines, sleep problems and disturbances, and backaches. In addition, video games causes social after effects, like addictive gamers always tend to be alone or they have a few friends. Also, many scientists say that some video games increase anger, hostility, and physiological and psychological arousal.
From the previous study and many other studies and research that have talked about the negative effects of video games, scientists concluded that playing video games is damaging, dangerous, and very bad for one's health. However, these studies were limited to a specific kind of video games, not all of them, and the scientists did not consider other factors, like the nature of the new generation of video games, which has developed video games with high-dimensional graphics, and few of them did both studies about the type of playing, like single playing or multiplayer playing. Moreover, there is a group of scientists who disagree with the previous side, who are saying that video games have a lot of benefits and powerful positive effects and applications for health and other fields like medicine and education. For example, the benefits of playing video games is a very long detailed journal written by 3 doctors from the Behavioral Science Institute at Wilbur University. The journal talks about different kinds of benefits. Firstly, the authors concluded that video games advance many cognitive skills even for violent shooter games like Halo and GTA. Those cognitive skills are spatial skills, problem-solving skills, and there is a big enhancement in creative capacity. Secondly, video games seem to to provide motivational benefits to gamers, such as enthusiasm, passion, and pleasure. Thirdly, video games have emotional benefits. They improve players' mood, promote relaxation and ward off anxiety, and simply makes people happier. Lastly, the authors are saying that the online multiplayer games and role-playing games teach people many social skills. Even violent video games are enhancing the social skills. But the critical point is whether these games are played competitively or cooperatively. Playing violent video games cooperatively and socially is more likely to display cooperatively attitudes, decreasing the aggressive cognition and increasing the proceeding social behaviors outside the gaming context. Indeed, video games seem to have good effects in many areas. There is a cognitive and brain researcher called Daphne Bavlier, a professor in art, science, and engineering at the Department of Brain and Cognitive Science at University of Rochester, talked about the benefits of playing video games in a presentation on TED Talks titled Your Brain on Video Games, and you can find the link for the presentation in the description box. Daphne Bavlier used the action-packed shooter games Call of Duty Black Ops as her model to confound many wrong statements. First, video games lead to better vision, not worse eyesight. Second, video games do not cause any thinking issues or education distractions. Instead, they make the mind faster and better in solving conflicts. Third, video games improve the ability of brain to track objects. Fourth, people who play video games have advanced multitasking skills. They move from one task to another and they have the ability to focus on many things at the same time. Lastly, players who play video games show greater ability in mental rotation exercise. She stated in the beginning of the presentation that those benefits are perceived only after reasonable doses of playing, not after becoming binging or addicted. As a result, action video games are not bad, but good for health and mental skills.
When the scientists recognized the positive effects of video games, they tried to leverage that power in different fields other than entertainment, especially in medicine and education. In the previous study that I showed you, the benefits of playing video games, the authors gave an example about how the medical field benefits from the positive effects of video games. Remission is a video game designed for kids who are suffering from cancer. This game lets kids to do several things inside the game. It lets them take control of a nanobot that shoots cancer cells, overcomes bacterial infection, and manages signs of nausea and constipation. This game educates kids how to follow the rules exactly regarding their cancer medical care. This game has now been distributed to over 200,000 patients and continues to be viewed as a successful treatment approach. Once again, Daphne Bavlier talked about how video games can be beneficial in the medical field. When she said that players who play action video games have better eyesight, she said,
"The other way that they are better is actually being able to resolve different levels of gray. Imagine you're driving in the fog. That makes a difference between seeing the car in front of you and avoiding the accident or getting into an accident. So we're actually leveraging that work to develop games for patients with low vision and to have an impact on retraining their brain to see better."
Additionally, Dr. Schaffer, a PhD candidate in computer science here at the University of South Carolina in College of Engineering and Computing, has talked about the benefits of video games and designing video games in a presentation on TEDx Talks in Colombia. Dr. Schaffer discussed how video games are good for health, business, and education, and because of that, he believes that video games are good for society. Dr. Schaffer talked about XR games, which are video games as a form of exercise. As an example of those games, Dance Dance Revolution and Wii Fit. In addition, there are many therapy games like Slate, which used to treat patients with aphasia. After all, these studies and research took a lot of time and hard work to be done. And efforts made by scientists are appreciated and respected because they either seek our health and rescue us from the perils of video games, or they want us to be benefits and get advantages from video games. Despite the acknowledged risk to individuals' mental and emotional health, what is concluded from this argument is that video games in moderation are actually beneficial to individuals and society as a whole. They are good and positive more than bad and negative. In other words, Even some video games could be bad, but ultimately video games are good. Video games could bring gamers many different benefits, but it's important for gamers to know how to play correctly. For example, playing in reasonable doses can prevent them from the risks of addiction. And if someone likes playing action and violent games, it is better to play cooperatively and choose a game with less bloody scenes. In addition, playing in a large screen with a realistic controller have an effect on gamers' violence behavior. This point had been discussed on this study. And believe it or not, video games can change the world. They can make a better world. Jane McGonigal, the director of game research and development at the Institute for the Future, in her book Reality is Broken, is showing how can we leverage the power of games to fix what is wrong with the real world, from social problems like depression and obesity to global issues like poverty and climate change. She is also revealing how can we harness the power of games to boost global happiness. Video games are really good. And Dr. Shepard, when he finished his presentation, he said,
"Now, games do not make monsters. If we know how to use them correctly, games can benefit all of us." Thank you for your time.
In conclusion, what I want to say, it's a wrong judgment to say that games are dangerous for health or cause negative effects without any specifying. The technology is open with two sides, positive and negative. It depends on the proper usage of it. Without doubt, video games can be harmful and beneficial, but it's a matter of how to handle them. Scientists have enriched the world with their best of abilities to keep children and adults safe by showing the risks and benefits of playing video games. Thanks for watching.